Pentateuch. So let's look at the title here for Deuteronomy. In Hebrew, Ele Hadvarim. Hadvarim. These are the words. That is the title. So when you hear the word empty, you know what is empty, I hope, right? Empty means Masoretic text, right? Masoretic text. That is what empty means. That's Hebrew Bible is known as empty. Then LXS 70, that is the Greek translation of Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. Hebrew Bible is translated, and it is translated even before Jesus. Even Jesus used this LXS or Septuagint. So that is, so in that book, what you read is Deuteronomion, right? Deutero in Greek, second, nomos, law, something known as second law. That is what Deuteronomion. And the next one is Vulgate, Latin Vulgate, Liber Deuteronomium. So from there, the book of Deuteronomy, we have received, book of Deuteronomy. Now let's look at the literary composition of Deuteronomy. Okay, basically what we are going to look at is how this book is written. That's all we are going to learn. We are not going to look at verse by verse or anything like that. Purpose. The purpose of Deuteronomy is a covenant renewal and a commitment to Yahweh, right? A commitment to Yahweh. Covenant renewal and a commitment to Yahweh. This commitment to Yahweh and his covenant was necessary before Israel entered the land. All right. So what we have to learn when you read Deuteronomy, understand this book is about a renewal of the covenant that God made with Moses and their commitment to Yahweh. Right. So let's look at the structure, how this is being structured. In examining the structural arrangement of this book, there are two basic approaches. People have looked at Pentateuch and especially Deuteronomy in different ways. Some people have a one view, other people have a different view. Let's look at what are those two views. One approach has the book being divided around the speech format. And the second has the book following a pattern of ancient, nearest, and covenant document. Is it, then a third is the combination of the first two. So is it a preaching book? Speech formats. Some people say this is like a preaching. It includes Moses preaching. So is it a speech? Or is this book a covenant document? Right, that is. Now, the speech format. Many scholars recognize the sermonic, you see, or hortatory, both are the same. Nature of this book. Hortatory means exhorting people to do something. Exhortation, remember that word. As such, this book is considered a series of 3 or 4 sermons, right? For them. So those who look at Deuteronomy as sermonic, they say there are 3 or 4 sermons in this book. And how do they explain? For example, the 3 addresses, if anyone said 3 addresses, they would say, chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 4, verse 43. introduced with the word, these are the words of Moses spoke to all Israel, right? So it is one section for them. Second, addresses in chapter 5, verse 1. So the second sermon begins with the 5. Moses announced all Israel and said. So that is, look at the difference. If chapter 1, verse 1, these are the words of Moses spoke to Israel. Chapter 5 has got a different beginning. Moses summoned all Israel and said. So that continues until chapter 28. So that is like 5 to 28, about 23 chapters are one sermon. That's the way some people say. Third starts at 29, chapter 29, where you read, Moses summoned all the Israelites. It doesn't say said, but all the Israelites. And that goes up to chapter 30. So 29 and 30, 2 chapters. The appendix then found in chapter 31 through chapter 34. The appendix, the conclusion to this. Each of the sections have sermonic type introduction with Moses addressing the nation. So Moses is the preacher talking. Now, maybe some people have a different opinion on that long book. Remember, from chapter 5 to 28, they said maybe that can be divided into 2. So some have divided chapter 5 to 26 one, and 27 to 30 another sermon, right? Anyway, these are all sermonic way of looking at. So what is the point? Point is that some people look at Deuteronomy as Moses' sermons, right? Moses' sermon. Second is a treaty format. Second way of looking Deuteronomy as a treaty. Remember, we learned about suzerain vassal treaties, just like that. For example, here, Klein and other scholars being argued that Book of Deuteronomy is a suzerain vassal treaty, which has been updated from the 2nd millennium BC. Hittite, BC, which is the Hittite suzerain vassal treaty. So this is followed Hittite treaties. This has become rather a common approach by many conservative OT scholars since it provides evidence supporting Mosaic authorship of Deuteronomy. So they all believe that this is a treaty. Now, what is the problem? Problem with this view is that Book of Deuteronomy is much longer than Hittite treaties. Another problem is sermonic format and the organizational differences from the Hittite treaty. This seems to clearly suggest that Book of Deuteronomy is not a covenant document per se. It's not a covenant document. So here is the covenantal people. Those who look at it as a covenant, this is how they explain. Chart is given there. MC means Mosaic code. How? So, for example, they explain that Exodus, Deuteronomy, and Joshua. In these 3 books, they see these suzerain vassal treaties. So for them, this is, for example, in the Exodus, you have Mosaic code given on Mount Sinai. Then in Deuteronomy, it is the Trans-Jordan. Remember Trans-Jordan as they crossed the Red Sea. And then MC, that is in Mosaic code is given in Canaan in the book of Joshua. So they try to look at this book as a covenant. I've given the stipulations of the covenant and things like that. All right. So what is the okay? How I think this should be seen. How it should be seen, taken from Deere. Okay, a series of addresses by Moses using covenant metaphor for the purpose of covenant renewal. I am looking at, yes, this is Moses is preaching. Yeah, this kind of sermonic style for sure. But how? He is using covenantal style in his preaching. So a better alternative is to see Moses as purposely used with some obvious theological modifications, a legal metaphor that was common in his day, such as Hittite treaty. Yes, he looked at the form of a Hittite treaty, which was very common in those days. And Moses was preaching. This would explain the similarities shared between these two sources. The sermonic format is best taken as part of Moses' rhetorical technique, preaching technique to reflect his various sermons. So I basically see Deuteronomy as the sermon of Moses, which has got the Hittite treaty format. Consequently, we might say Moses had a series of sermons dealing with the covenantal renewal. Here is the outline, the main outline, if you can look at. All right, you have the introduction, first 5 verses. Then until chapter 4, you have the first Moses address. Right, it is like in chapter 1 until 3, it is the recollections, testimonies, experience of God in history. Right, so you see various areas: Horeb, Kadesh Barnea, Mount Seir, Moab, Mon, and the conquest of Heshbon, Bashan, allocation of the land, and the request for is refused, and things like that. So you see the recollections there. Then B, exhortation of Moses to obey the law. That's how you see. Then you have the second address. Second address is really long. Chapter 4, verse 24 to chapter 26. So that is really long, where you have the recapitulation of the law, at Horeb, right? Renewing the law, and then general commands and warnings, what they need to do, right? And then some legislations are explained. And then when you come, yes, so it is very long, and I have given the outline. When you read the book of Deuteronomy, try to read with this outline. Maybe keeping outline in your hand will help you. And he discusses about all kinds of things, because remember, he's retelling the law. That was the big thing. And for example, escaped slaves, prostitution, lending, charging interest, vows, eating neighbors' fields, and divorce and remarriage, new marriage, all kinds of things are being explained. Then conclusion is given there. Then you have the third address, that is blessing and curses. Again, that Hittite treaty format, blessing and curses, chapter 27 and 20, 28 and 29, 3 chapters. Then you have Moses' fourth address, that is chapter 29 to 30. Again, he's appealing for covenant faithfulness. Concluding charge, he's going to die very soon. And then you have the last one, the continuity of the covenant from Moses to Joshua, chapter 31 to chapter 34. Moses selecting, God told Moses to select man in whom the Holy Spirit is, and he chose Joshua, and Joshua is taking the baton to lead Israel. All right, and chapter 34 concludes with the death of Moses. Most probably that portion might be written by Joshua. That is in the description added, but because to have a proper conclusion for Pentateuch, that is what most of the scholars suggest. All right. So that is what about Deuteronomy.